Buenos días. Mi nombre es Adelina Marchini y sirvo con gratitud como presidente de su Consejo de Administración. Good morning. My name is Adeline Marchini, and I serve gratefully as the president of your Board of Trustees. Thank you. Bienvenido a la Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de Fresno, California. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno, California. Happy Pride Month. Feliz mes de orgullo. Hello to everyone on our virtual campus and to everyone here on our Alluvial Avenue campus. We are one congregation in many places. Somos una congregación en muchos lugares. We acknowledge that our Alluvial Avenue Church campus sits within the traditional homelands of the Yokuts and Mono peoples, the past and present stewards of this land. Unitarian Universalism believes in an inclusive welcome. You are welcome no matter your race, culture of origin, age, spiritual background, or religious beliefs. You are welcome no matter your disabilities, the amount of money in your bank account, your level of education, or your neurodiversity. You are welcome with or without documentation. Son bienvenidos con papeles y sin papeles. You are welcome if you are lesbian, gay, bi, trans, non-binary, gender fluid, or questioning. Todos son bienvenidos aquí. If you are on our virtual campus, we want to make sure you have a chance to participate during our time of personal sharing. If you are holding a joy, sorrow, concern, or gratitude in your heart this morning that you would like to share, please type that in the chat box on our virtual campus. We'll write them down and give them to Tim so he can include them in the service. If you don't do it right now in the chat box, we won't be able to include them. Our worship theme for the month is celebrating blessings. After the service, I invite you to join me at the sermon discussion table just outside the doors here in the courtyard. We'll talk about Reverend Tim's sermon and what it might have stirred in you. I especially invite you to join me if you are new or newish to the church. The after-service coffee hour on our Alluvial campus can seem overwhelming for many of us, including myself. So our sermon discussion table is a comfortable way to meet a few people and have a gentle, guided conversation. You can also ask any questions you have about Unitarian Universalism or about this congregation. I hope you will join me. Now in the chat box, or in person, or in the silence of your heart, let's take a moment to say buenos dias and greet one another.
Buenos dias.
Is your mic on? Buenos dias. So welcome to our celebration of history, of family, of cultural background, and how in Unitarian Universalism all of that mixed together to give us a pretty extraordinary moment in history that has relevance for today, and you're going to have to wait till the sermon to find out all about that. I can say, though, that I think that the roof is going to be knocked off the sanctuary this morning by our guest vocalist. I'm going to let Lorenzo have the honor of welcoming you, Alan.
Well, it's my great honor and pleasure to welcome, first time of, I hope, many recurrent appearances, Ellen R. Moore is with us today. Ellen's fairly new to the Valley, so make her welcome, feel welcome, and she is the current Director of Research and Development at the Fresno Philharmonic. So that's...
Let's allow the sound of the tingsha to carry us to that quiet place within that knows, without a doubt, that we are good and that we are loved.
I'm sitting in the railway station, got a ticket for my destination. On a tour of one-night stands, my suitcase and guitar in hand, and every stop is neatly planned for a poet and a one-man band. Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound. Home, where my thoughts escaping, home, where my music's playing, home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Every day's an endless stream of cigarettes and magazines. And each town looks the same to me, the movies and the factories, and every stranger's face I see reminds me that I long to be homeward bound. I wish I was homeward bound. Home, where my thoughts escaping, home, where my music's playing, home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Tonight I'll sing my songs again, I'll play the game and pretend. But all my words come back to me in shades of mediocrity, like emptiness in harmony. I need someone to comfort me. Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound. Home, where my thoughts escaping, home, where my music's playing, home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Silently for me.
The chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, and I often think of it as a beacon that we light to call us home to our best selves again when the week has kind of knocked us a bit off balance. The chalice calls us home to that heart space that is within us, and that heart space that we hope we create around us, and together we create beyond us. And so as I light the chalice this morning, I light it for all of us as it calls us home to ourselves. And as our chalice flame burns, I invite us to rise in body or spirit, and let's join in singing our song of praise, Morning Has Broken.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Morning has broken. Surge l'aurora alla primera, canta l'auraga, voz inicial, l'ora al canto, l'ora all'alba, y a su principio trascendental. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first wrath. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, strung in completeness where our feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's our play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, love's recreation of the new day.
I invite us to remain standing as we share together the words of our mission statement. La misión de la Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de Fresno es amar inclusivamente, crecer espiritualmente, servir con gratitud y trabajar por la justicia. The mission of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno is to love inclusively, grow spiritually, serve gratefully, and work for justice. Please be seated. The last few days have been slightly toasty here in Fresno. And in the midst of that kind of heat, some of us forget to breathe and breathe deeply. And so I invite us together as one to take a nice deep centering breath in, breathing in peace. We hold a moment, we breathe out love. Again, together we take a nice juicy breath in, breathing in peace. We hold a moment, we breathe out love. And one last time, breathing in together, breathing in peace. We hold a moment, we breathe out love. We continue breathing together in this space made sacred by our own humanity, by our beating hearts. And I invite you to let that breath carry you back over the last week, the last 7 days. What have you seen and heard? What have you experienced? In the last week, what concerned or frightened you? And if you want to share that in the chat box on our virtual campus, you can do that. In the last week, what gave you hope? We carry into this space the impact of the last week, the last 7 days, and with that we're a mixture of joys, sorrows, concerns, and hopefully at least a little gratitude. We create space in our service to honor that, and some of us stop at the small table at the entranceway to our Alluvial Avenue campus, while others on our virtual campus have typed their personal sharing in the chat box. And this is some of what is alive for us in this room today. From our virtual campus, Christina is feeling joyful for classical symphonic music, as well as a sorrow. How few people know how symphonic music heals both the body and the mind. Leslie is feeling a joy for being able to see whales this week while I'm on San Juan Island, and being able to hear the wonderful Ellen singing today. Beautiful. Nancy is feeling joyful that Nancy and Laurie leave tomorrow for Croatia, joining a team of disaster rebuilders in an area devastated by the December 2020 earthquake. Their work will enable a family to be reunited and move back into their home. So we wish you blessings and safe travels and a safe return to Nancy and to Laurie. Cheyenne would like to thank the church for giving her the opportunity to take care of Al Goodman. Please continue to hold Al in prayers as he transitions into an assisted living environment. We have someone who is feeling grateful for having a spiritual home here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Fresno during tough personal family times. I'm going to slide right over here because I know Ed has one more card from our virtual campus. Thank you, Ed. These two are related. Jamie is feeling a sorrow that she can't be here today, but am joyful that I am there on spirit and online. And Lisa is full of hope for life's brutal yet beautiful journey, and asking that we hold Jamie in love and light as she is taking a break for personal centering and healing. Sending you much love, Jamie, on our virtual campus. I also want to jump back to slide 44 and collectively acknowledge that we await with anxiety and apprehension and fear the inevitable and soon forthcoming decision that will dismantle Roe v. Wade, plunging our nation into a crisis of forced pregnancy and forced parenthood. And in the midst of this very palpable anticipatory grief, we remember that life is that mix of grief and joy, and we celebrate our blessings, the beauty of Pride Month and the second annual Pride flag raising this past Friday at Fresno City Hall. We remember too, who'da thunk? Fresno and the flag. We remember too our beloved church members and friends who are living with health challenges, compromised mobility, or other impacts to their well-being. We lift up Donna P., who continues her long hospitalization, Edith H., William H., Laura G., Molly K., Glenda R., Pat M., Al G., who Cheyenne has let us know is moving into assisted living. We lift up Brandon E. and Josephine J. Also in some of our hearts is the remembrance that today is the 6th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando on June 12th. These are the faces of the 49 young LGBTQ people who lost their lives in that horrible occurrence. 53 additional young people were wounded in an epidemic of hate and gun violence that today continues unabated. We also lift up 2 more notables this week. We mentioned that this week a white Grand Rapids, Michigan police officer was charged with murder for shooting black motorist Patrick Loyola in the back of the head during a traffic stop. Yet another instance of black bodies being seen as expendable threats rather than human beings. On our virtual campus, if you would like to affirm Black Lives Matter, we invite you to type BLM in the chat box. And I would be at fault if I didn't also name the collective horror, outrage, and terror at the initial sharing of the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th treasonous insurrection, assault on democracy, and attempted coup orchestrated by a sitting president of the United States. And so, for all that's been shared, for all that I know we hold in the sacred silence of our own hearts, and for all those who have no one to remember them on this morning, no one to speak their name with gentleness or love, we light our candle of community. By our remembering, may we and they be blessed. We light a second candle this morning, as is our custom, for the 6.31 million citizens of the world who have lost their life in this pandemic, 1.01 million of whom are citizens of this country. Our call to meditation is one we haven't done for a while. The words are so beautiful, and it's words that are so important for us to speak to ourselves as well as each other. And the words are, how could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. As I often say, I wonder how different many of our lives would be if this was the message we heard every day as we were growing up. And what a gift that for our parents here today, these are words you can speak to your children each and every day. We're going to be singing this 3 times. The first time, imagine you're looking in a mirror and you're saying these words to yourself. The second time, someone you know who needs light and love, hold them in your heart as you share these words for them as a reflection or prayer. And then the third time, for the complexity of our planet and all that we face, to the unity that we hope for. So self, someone who needs light and love, and then for the whole. How could anyone?
1, 2. How could anyone ever tell you there was anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than
Our words of prayer and reflection come from Keith Goheen. Let us pray. Spirit of life, fuente de amor, fount of human goodness, source of wonder and mystery that some of us call God. In this place, may the sick find healing. May the lonely find solace. May the harried find composure. May the weak find strength. In this place, may certainty lost be wisdom gained. May power restrained be justice unchained. May the one join with the many. May the many become one. In this place of trial and transition, may the true way be found. Que así sea, bendito sea. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
One, two, three, 1, 5, 6.
Traveling at night, the headlights were bright, and we'd been up many an hour. And all through my brain came the refrain of home and its warm and fire.
And home sings me of sweet things. My life there has its own wings to fly over the mountains, though I'm standing still. The people I've seen, they come in between the cities of tiring life. The trains come and go, but inside you know the struggle will soon be a fight. And home sings me of sweet things. My life there has its own wings to fly over the mountains, though I'm standing still. Traveling at night, the headlights were bright, but soon the sun came through the trees. And round the next bend, the flowers will send the sweet scent of home in the breeze. And home sings me of sweet things. My life there has its own wings to fly over the mountains, though
One of the ways that we create home is, as a song lyric sings, when we tell our story from deep inside and we listen with a loving mind and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. I invite us to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
3, 4, 1, 2, 3. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, when we see our faces in each other's eyes, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when we're blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, when we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, and our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Please be seated. And let's hear it for the band Stolen Thunder. I always love it when Dawn does percussion because there's all these fascinating sounds coming from there. So before the sermon, a brief introduction. Because of the war in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people's fierce devotion to their homeland, I've been thinking a lot about the places people call home. And you've been singing so beautifully, Ellen, about the places people call home. I've been thinking a lot about the places our ancestors called home. This led me to want to revisit a sermon from 7 years ago and explore it again in the content of these complicated times. Because my familial origins are partly based in Eastern Europe, it's easy to trace my familial lineage. I want to acknowledge up front my white privilege in that regard, and lift up that may not be the case for many Black, Indigenous, and other marginalized persons of colors whose history has been impacted by colonialism, impacted by slavery, or genocide. I'm also aware that familial origins might be a tender theme for some of us who were adopted into our family. So I ask us all to hold that awareness and sensitivity during the sermon. For one brief, shining moment, the Unitarian capital of the world. How important is it for us to know where we come from? How important is it to claim our roots, our origins, as part of our identity? Take my family, for instance, the people and places that I come from. My dad's side of the family immigrated from Poland in the late 1880s, booking passage on those great ships that brought a swelling tide of Eastern Europeans to America's shores. Immigrants all, refugees all welcomed by Lady Liberty's outstretched arm, lifting her lamp before the golden door. My dad's people settled in the Polish section of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and became the sweating and poorly paid backbone of its burgeoning steel industry. My dad was raised in a home where his grandmother spoke only Polish and his grandfather struggled with rudimentary English. My dad's family, the Kaczmarek family, attended a Polish language Catholic church. They ate poor Polish people food like stewed cabbage and onions, boiled potatoes, if they were lucky, pierogis, and when they were really lucky, that Polish sausage known as kielbasa. But even as my dad was steeped in all things Polish, his family was so ashamed of their heritage. There was absolutely no sense of celebrating the blessing of a Polish identity. My grandfather changed his last name from the Polish Kaczmarek to the more German-sounding Kaczmark, so that he could pass as German. Grandpa didn't want to be seen, and I quote him, as a dumb Polak. My grandfather was ashamed that he had only a 6th grade education. My grandfather was ashamed of the manual labor he performed at the McKinney hinge factory. My grandfather was ashamed of the Polish language and didn't allow my dad to learn it. My dad inherited that shame, and so I too grew up ashamed of being Polish, ashamed of sharing a bloodline with what I was told were ignorant, uneducated, lumbering Neanderthals. Polish in my family was bad blood. Polish was bad heritage. Years later, when I felt called to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, I went to seminary and began to study the history of our awesome Unitarian Universalist faith. There, for the first time, I learned to be proud of my Polish heritage, because Poland, among other things, was the place of one of the greatest moments in our faith's history. For one brief, shining moment, Poland was the Unitarian capital of the world. I also see this history that I'm going to share as what we, as religious liberals, may face in these troubled times, depending on the direction our country takes in the days, weeks, and years ahead. And we know we're standing in a place that it could go anywhere, and we don't know how we as religious liberals will be called to react. And so, this moment of Polish Renaissance, I kind of just like hearing that word, Polish and Renaissance. Would you say that nice and loud? Polish Renaissance. This moment of Polish Renaissance actually began in Italy in the year 1547, when a guy by the name of Laelius Socinus fled Venice to avoid being tortured or burned alive by the Italian Catholic Inquisition. A lawyer by trade, Laelius Socinus prized reason, that power of our mind to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of logic. He believed that reason must be part of the religious life, our religious life, and that one's faith needed to be formed by personal judgment and experience, not by acceptance of what someone else had long ago decided was true. Laelius Socinus studied the Bible and became convinced that the teachings of the Catholic Church were, in the words of historian David Bumba, in fundamental conflict with Scripture itself and with the very nature of human reason. Needless to say, this didn't go over too well with the Catholic Church and the Vatican. For the next 15 years, Laelius Socinus kept on the move to avoid arrest for his ideas, while constantly teaching his radical religious perspective till he died in 1562 at the age of just 37 years. But luckily, before his death, Laelius Socinus bequeathed his trunk of writings to his young nephew, Faustus Socinus, who is going to become the hero of our story. Faustus opened that trunk and studied, as recounted by David Bumba, his uncle's written legacy of radical religious thought. And Faustus discovered there the insistence that human reason is equal to Scripture in authority. Now, that idea was revolutionary in that time. Heck, here in Fresno, in many circles, that's revolutionary today. To claim that our human brain could have the same authority as the sacred Bible. To claim that what the human brain could think had as much standing, as much authenticity, as much validity as what some believe is the written Word of God. It blew young Faustus Socinus's mind. Convinced, converted, and enthused, Faustus Socinus left Italy and arrived in Poland in 1580. Now, it was a real time of religious upheaval in Poland. Protestant and Catholic congregations were literally battling over who taught and who practiced the true teachings of Jesus Christ. Someone had to be right, they said, and always someone had to be wrong. Now, a smaller group of the Protestants, the Minor Reformed Church of Poland, there won't be a test at the end, so you don't have to memorize all these names. This small splinter group broke away from the main church and began teaching a form of Unitarianism, teaching that Jesus was a great human prophet, but not divine, teaching that God was one, and that the concept of the Holy Trinity, three persons in one God, was not biblically based, but a human-created concept and simply not true. Hence, Unitarianism over and against Trinitarianism. Further, and radically so, these Unitarians taught that God was all-loving and that hell was a dangerous figment of someone's imagination. They said that a loving God would never condemn anyone to eternal damnation. They said that everyone would be welcomed back into the love from whence they came. Love was the doctrine of this church. El amor fue la doctrina de esta iglesia. Free-thinking Faustus Socinus arrived in Poland, escaping from Italy where he was being persecuted, to find this small revolutionary religious community that shared his religious views, and said, "When is the next new member Sunday? Where do I sign the membership book? I'm joining this church." Faustus Socinus did more than just join. He took leadership of this struggling, small, minor Reformed church and helped transform it, solidifying its beliefs with charisma, organization, and a clear mission to steer its future. Its members were soon called Socinians, after Faustus Socinus' last name, and their center was in this small Polish town called Rakow. Now, let me tell you about the origins of this amazing place called Rakow. Rakow was founded in 1567. It was an intentionally created community, a place that offered religious tolerance and acceptance of differences, a place of true sanctuary for everyone. The idea for this town first came from a woman named Jadwiga Sienkiewicz, who convinced her wealthy husband to use his great fortune to build a religious and cultural utopia. A few days' carriage ride from Poland's capital city, Rakow was isolated enough to be safe, at least in the beginning, but close enough to allow commerce and communication. Rakow was one woman's grand experiment, an attempt to reform the world through radical religious ideals. In Rakow, all wealth was shared communally, with economic justice for all. The hierarchical social order was turned into a level playing field. Nobles and merchants were equal to farmers and craftsmen. The people of Rakow were pro-peace pacifists and would do nothing that would endanger the life of another. They refused military service and outlawed the death penalty. All of these values combined, they said, was how one lived out the true teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. This, they said, was true Christianity. After stopping in Rakow, a visitor reported, quote, "I felt as though I was transported into another world. For whereas elsewhere all was full of wars and tumult, there was all quiet, all calm and modest in behavior. So you might think them angels." When Faustus Socinus arrived some 13 years after Jadwiga Sienkiewicz founded Rakow, the town was struggling to live out its mission in the larger community. But under Faustus Socinus' leadership, Rakow experienced a Polish Renaissance. By 1602, Rakow was the center of an international intellectual movement. The town's Unitarian Academy was attracting minds from all over Europe wanting to study in this unique town. Rakow became the Unitarian capital of the world. And here, Faustus Socinus began to profusely write and publish religious pamphlets, codifying his Unitarian teachings to share with the world. Now, it was those writings being published that brought the wrath of the Catholic Church, which labeled this peaceful, reason-filled way of being religious as a heresy. And now a warning, some of my next descriptions describe violence. According to historian Charles A. Howe, the Catholic Order of the Jesuits began mounting an assault against the Unitarians, charging that, among other things, they were devil worshippers. No. Faustus Socinus was attacked by a group of soldiers under the command of a Catholic noble. Excrement was spread over his face and pushed into his mouth. Unitarian churches throughout Poland were attacked by angry mobs. A much more serious attack on Faustus Socinus took place a few days later when a mob of students celebrating the Catholic holy day of the Ascension broke into the house where Socinus lay sick in bed recovering from that earlier attack. They dragged him to the marketplace, burned his books and papers, and threatened to burn him as well if he did not recount his Unitarian beliefs. He refused, and the mob decided to take him to the river and drown him instead. Faustus Socinus was saved only by the efforts of a bystander who convinced the mob to turn the heretic over to him. Socinus luckily was spirited away and spent the next 4 years in hiding. But his writing continued, the pinnacle of which was the Racovian Catechism, a comprehensive explanation of Unitarian belief and a celebration of the power of the individual human mind to reason for itself. It's one of the most important documents in our Unitarian Universalist religious history, although I don't recommend reading it. It is a slog. The printing press at Rakow circulated copies of that catechism, as well as over 500 other Unitarian titles. It circulated all over Europe. It was these Polish pamphlets that carried Unitarianism to Great Britain, which eventually led to Unitarian thought coming to the 13 British colonies. We here in this church in Fresno might not be who we are today if the Unitarians of Poland hadn't been who they needed to be so many years ago. Warning, more descriptions of violence. Persecution of those Unitarians, also called Socinians, continued even as that printing press poured forth the good news of Unitarianism. To make a clear point that the human mind should not be used for thinking for oneself, the Catholic Jesuits had one member of the church beheaded in the great marketplace of Warsaw. Prior to his execution, his tongue was cut out as a punishment for blasphemy. Once beheaded, his body was burned as further punishment. Now today, we don't even have to think twice about walking into this Alluvial Ave sanctuary. We don't have to think twice about sitting in the virtual campus and worrying about losing our lives for what we believe. But just a few hundred years ago, to be in this room would be to risk our very lives. To be in your homes practicing the religion you're practicing would be to risk your lives. The final destruction of Rakow began with a stupid schoolboy prank. A Catholic crucifix had been stuck in the ground on one piece of land that both the Catholics and the Socinians claimed. Deciding to play a little target practice, 2 Socinian students knocked the crucifix down with stones. They later apologized and tried to make amends, but this was what the Catholic Church had been waiting for. The academy at Rakow was ordered closed, the printing press destroyed, and all religious liberals were banished from the town. The Jesuits continued to persecute the peace-loving Unitarians throughout Poland, and 22 years later, the Polish king ordered them to either convert to Catholicism or get out of Poland, leaving behind all of their property for the government to seize. Probably the real reason there was any persecution to begin with. If those Socinians and Unitarians refused both options, they were going to be killed. Those who fled Poland as religious refugees further scattered the seeds of Unitarianism across the continent. But many children, women, and men died in the forced migration out of Poland during the midst of winter. Others just refused to leave their homes, and they were slaughtered. How important is it for us to know where we come from? How important is it for us to claim our roots, our origins as part of our identity? 12 years ago, my dad and I traveled to Poland. Dad wanted to see the villages where the Kaczmarek clan had begun, Wilczyn and Poznan. For him, it was an ancestral homecoming, an opportunity to see firsthand where he came from. One day while I was there, I hired a translator and a guide and set out to find Rakow. It took a while and a few wrong turns, but find it I did. The town was small and unremarkable, but for me, it was a religious homecoming, an opportunity to see firsthand one of the places where we, as Unitarian Universalists, were from. It was a chance to stand in a place that, for one brief, shining moment, had been the world capital of Unitarianism. There, in Rakow, I searched and located the foundation of the Unitarian Church that had been torn down by the Jesuits in 1638. Using journal entries from that time, I was able to find the spot on the river where the Rakow Academy once stood. The giant mound in that location looked like it could be covering the torn down bricks of that institution of Unitarian learning. I even found the location where the printing press probably stood, that powerful piece of modern technology that spread Unitarian thought throughout the world, the printing press, their social media of the time. Today, I'm proud to be Polish. I'm proud that I'm from the Polish towns of Wilczyn and Poznan. When I think of home, when I think of a place where there's love overflowing, I'm proud that my people's homeland was and is Poland. I'm proud that my Polish ancestors were Polish peasants who worked in the fields with their calloused hands. I'm proud that my great-grandmother and great-grandfather courageously left their homeland as refugees in search of economic opportunity in a far-off land. I'm proud that my grandpa sweated in the mills of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, alongside so many other Polish steelworkers who made up the manufacturing backbone of this country. Today, I am also proud to be a Unitarian Universalist. I'm proud that Poland helped shape our remarkable religion. I'm proud that Poland is part of the living tradition of progressive faith that has been passed on to us. I'm proud that Poland moved reason to the center of our faith, our ability to think, understand, and form judgments by logic. I'm proud that Poland helped move love to the center of our faith, celebrating the inherent worth and dignity of all people. As Unitarian Universalists, let us remember where we come from. So, in these troubled times, we can better understand where we might go and what we must do as religious liberals in the complicated days and weeks and years to come. Let's make our ancestors proud. Que así sea, bendito sea. May it be so, blessed be. Amen.
Before.
When I think of home, I think think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. Wind that makes the tall trees bend into leaning. Suddenly the snowflakes that fall have a meaning, sprinkling the sea makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I have some direction. It would sure be nice to be back home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time in my life to grow up. Time be my friend, let me start again. Suddenly my world's gone and changed its face, but I still know where I'm going. I have had my mind spun around in space, and yet I've watched it growing. Oh, if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to know if we should believe what we see. Tell us, should we run away, or should we try and stay? Or would it be better just to let things be? Living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy, but it taught me to love, so it's real to me. And I've learned that we must look inside our hearts to find a world full of love, like yours, like mine, like home, like home.
Let's give it up again, Ellen. That was great. And as I want to echo what Lorenzo said, we hope that you will be back soon. So welcome here. On the second Sunday of each month, we hold a special offering for a social justice group, organization, or individual that is in alignment with our Unitarian Universalist values. How wonderful that here in the Central Valley there are so many that are. I was going to introduce our guest speaker to introduce this month's recipient. Unfortunately, Maidia Hernandez is unable to be with us this morning due to a schedule change. So I have the pleasure of speaking about this Sunday's social justice organization, Fresno Barrios Unidos. Fresno Barrios Unidos provides unconditional support, love, and guidance for youth, young adults, and their families in Fresno. This community, like California itself, is changing fast, and they believe that youth must be at the forefront of creating the world of their dreams. They say that we, Fresno United, Barrios United says, we meet people where they are and follow their lead to help them be healthy, hopeful, and engaged in creating communities that foster individual and collective well-being. All young people and their families belong at Fresno Barrios Unidos. Youth often come to us initially with concerns about their health, questions about their rights, curiosity about birth control, or support around relationships. They stay because they find a place, a home that believes in them and offers them a chance to create the changes they want in their neighborhoods, schools, and communities. If you would like to support this important work, a slide will appear in a moment giving all the different options for our virtual and Alluvial Avenue sanctuaries to give. You can also drop cash, checks, or bricks of gold in the baskets held by the ushers as you exit the sanctuary. But first, in the spirit of grateful generosity, please join me in our words of offering. If not us, then who? If not open hearts, then what? If not now, then when? If not here, then where? If not generously, then how? If not us, then you. Thank you for supporting the important work of Barrios Unidos. We lit the chalice at the beginning of our service as a beacon to guide us home, even as we extinguish its flame. Let this flame continue to burn. Let's join Karen and Troy in our chalice extinguishing words.
Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts.
Just a few brief reminders before I offer our closing words, and then we have our sung benediction. Sunday services and our Children's Sunday program continue for the next 3 weeks, including Sunday, July 3rd, and the return of our annual summer jazz service. After July 3rd, the next 4 Sundays, July 10, 17, 24, and 31, there will be no services on our Alluvial Avenue campus or on our virtual campus to give our Sunday staff a much-needed chance to rest and renew. On the virtual campus, though, we are going to offer links to attend virtual services at other Unitarian Universalist congregations on the West Coast, so you'll be able to drop in and see them. Our services here in both sanctuaries and our children's programming return Sunday, August 7th. So you got 3 more weeks of services. I want to also just remind folks as we exit the sanctuary today, just let our socially distanced folks leave first, and then the rest of us follow on behind them for the receiving line. Today, Patty, would you come on up? Patty Bennett is our member services coordinator. It is Patty's great pleasure to help folks who are new or newish to the community find their way around the maze that can often seem like Unitarian Universalism here in Fresno. Today, after the service, if you meet her at the pulpit, there will be a brief guided tour of the campus, just so you'll see where everything is. That'll be right after the end of the service. Other options after the end of the service, coffee hour is outside. Also, Adeline will be at the after-service discussion table and also be there to answer questions for newcomers. Who wouldn't want to hang out for 15 minutes with the president of our board of trustees? Also happening after the service ends, today is the last day for you to give feedback on next steps in implementing the 8th principle that we have recently adopted, where this congregation commits itself to dismantling white supremacy culture, both within this congregation but also within our denomination at large. Look for the tables with questions where you can write your answers. Last but not least, today is the kickoff of the Neuroma Walker Youth Library Summer Reading Program. Folks don't know we have an extraordinary curated children's and youth library on campus that is open to all, where the books have been carefully selected to reflect Unitarian Universalist religious values. It is truly an extraordinary collection, and we're encouraging our children and youth to participate in the summer reading program. If this is your first, second, or third time with us today, we have a little custom. We like to gently welcome you, just so we can say thank you for being here on this Sunday afternoon. We're going to invite you to stand in a moment. We won't leave you standing by yourself for long. So if this is your first, second, or third time here on Alluvial Ave campus, could you rise? On our virtual campus, could you type your name into the chat box? Welcome back. Welcome. Welcome. Wonderful. Welcome. I invite the rest of the congregation to rise with them. Let us, if we came with a pod, we can join hands. If we came on our own, our hands over our hearts. Our closing words come from someone I think you may have heard from before, former First Lady Michelle Obama. Remember this truth and let it guide our lives. We have a responsibility to live up to the legacy of those who came before us by doing all we can to help those who come after us. Que así sea, bendito sea. May it be so, blessed be. Amen.
1, 2, 3, 4. Passage, safe passage. May we have safe passage on our way. Safe passage on our way, brothers and searcher. Safe passage on your way, sweet pilgrim. Safe passage on our way. On our way.
Shalom and assalamu alaikum.
1, 2, 3.